Hello and welcome to another DIY Indie Musicians Talking Music. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I've got Jason from Submithub. Hi, Jason.
Yo.
And we're going to talk about what I think is probably one of the greatest services for up and coming and start. Well, we can talk about that.
We'll talk about it.
Especially, I find it very useful when I started out because it was a great way to actually get criticism that wasn't from your friends and family that were just lying to you. If that makes any sense.
It does make sense, yeah.
So Jason, why don't we start a little bit about you, and then you can tell us how you came upon the great idea to start Submithub.
Okay. I am coming to you from South Africa. So that's a good starting point. I was raised here, but I actually moved to the States for my secondary schooling. So I did high school in California and university in California. And then I got my first job out in DC, and I hated it. My job was figuring out how much to pay executives at nonprofits. So if you're a nonprofit, you're typically under a lot of scrutiny in terms of executive pay. So you need to provide proof for why your salary is warranted. And so my job was to essentially defend exorbitant salaries. So that was fun. And I have a lot to be grateful there because I started a music blog called Indie Shuffle while I was out in DC. And I did that as a way to escape my first ever corporate job, which wasn't really working for me. And it was a bit of a right time, right place type of thing. So this was in 2007, 2008, and online streaming was really taking off, but not in the sense of Spotify and SoundCloud, but in the sense of torrenting and MP3s. So blogs were actually a really good way for people to try and figure out what they should go out and illegally torrent. And eventually also blogs became a great way to just download MP3s. So we were all hosting these MP3s and putting them up. So my music blog was taking off on the side, and I was in the process of getting fired from my day job. I distinctly remember my boss saying, "It's time to focus on your career. I think you should stop blogging." Yeah, I'm glad I didn't listen. So yeah, I was on my way out, and then I got a phone call from Google, and they were looking for someone to help out with their executive compensation in San Francisco. And of course I said, yeah, this is, it's my passion. It's my dream. My current job is going to be very unhappy to see me go. So we're going to have to negotiate a very high salary. And they just kept saying, okay, cool. Because the thing that drew them in, ironically, was the music blog. So they thought it was really cool that I was running a music blog.
Yeah.
So packed up my bags, moved to San Francisco, got to work for what was at the time the coolest company in the world to work for. And it was awesome. And they actually let me continue to run this music blog on the side. In fact, they would use it at meetings, all hands company meetings. They would use me and a couple of others as examples of Googlers who have really cool side passions. So they would, here's Sydney, and she was at the Olympics in 2008. And here's Samantha, and she's got a candy shop. And here's Jason, he's got a music blog. And so it was kind of cool. And again, right time, right place. 2010, 2011, 2012, music blogs were really taking off. And they were becoming, in a way, king makers and queen makers. If you could correctly play the music blogosphere, you would find yourself headlining festivals like Coachella and Bonnaroo, and it was amazing, the power that could be harnessed from that. And there really was no other way to do it online.
Right.
Spotify didn't exist. SoundCloud was in its infancy. So that was really the meat and potatoes of it. And what that meant is that collectively, bloggers were really powerful. Some of them more so than others. There were huge blogs like Pitchfork and Rolling Stone. But Indie Shuffle, we found ourselves in this sort of just second tier, right below those big ones, where we were part of a group of blogs on a platform called Hype Machine. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Hype Machine.
Yes.
But Hype Machine was it. And it was it. They had a good run of about 4 or 5 years where that was where the music industry went to discover who was coming up. And what Hype Machine did was they just kept track of all the blogs. And they would say, well, 10 blogs have written about this artist in the last week. And they had a chart, a popular chart based on, who was trending and who wasn't. So record labels would sit down every Friday and go through the Hype Machine popular chart and just listen to it. And that was their A&R meeting. It was an incredible A&R tool, and for music festivals too, as I mentioned. What this meant was that us bloggers were an important part of the promotion campaign for artists. And in the early years, from 2008 to 2011, most artists themselves weren't savvy to this. There wasn't a lot of information on the internet about it. YouTube tutorials and podcasts like this weren't so much a thing. And so the good ones would hire publicists. The publicists knew how to do all of this. And there was just a huge business in, you're a musician, you pay a publicist $2,000 a month, and they've got all the connections with the blogs. So what ended up happening was that with the blog, initially I'd get a few emails every day and I'd be like, this is awesome. People are sending me music, and I would listen to it. And flash forward to about 2013, and it was more like 200 or 300 emails a day. So what was going on in the background is that more artists were becoming DIY and independent. I don't know when, distributors like TuneCore and DistroKid and all of these guys started to really get going, but they gave musicians a lot of power to step back from a label, do things themselves. And they also started to kind of skip the publicist and also come to blogs directly. So you would have artists go and buy a spreadsheet of 500 emails of all the blogger contacts, put them all in a BCC and send it off. And so what this lacked was any sort of targeting. And as a result, I gave up on my inbox. It wasn't worth my time. Maybe I'd scan it occasionally and look for a name I recognized. But by 2014, 2015, I didn't even open it. I didn't even look. And what was happening in the background of all this was that blogs were losing their clout. So, I mean, if you've got two waves, you kind of got the influence of blogs coming up and up and up and then coming down. But you had this sort of contacting blogs following behind on the same curve.
Yeah.
And so we were on the down, but the contacts were still coming up. Let me try to get these charts in. Here's my chart. And so we kind of had our ad revenue drying up. The whole internet was undergoing a big shift where initially people had been advertising as if it was a replacement for magazines. And so a lot of online blogs were charging the same rates you would charge in a magazine.
Wow.
$5 for 1,000 views, $10 for 1,000 views. And along comes this indie company called Facebook and this other one called Google. And they say, well, instead of charging you $5 for 1,000 views, why don't we, charge you $5 for 1,000 clicks? And they were able to just completely undercut that market. And no one in their right mind would pay these rates. So what you saw across the blogosphere as a whole was that not just music, but just blogging on the internet, is that you had all these small companies that had kind of come up and created businesses, and they had this revenue stream, and it was just slowly disappearing. So at one point we were making about $15,000 a month in ad revenue.
Wow. Today
we're making about $200 a month from the same ads. It's crazy because, and I don't blame marketers. It's far more effective to pay for clicks. The other thing that had happening was that Spotify came into existence, Apple Music shortly thereafter, Google Music, YouTube really took off for music, and music became a commodity in a way.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I might need to go grab some water. Can we pause?
Yeah. That's all right. I'll
let me do that.
Yeah, go and get some water. That is quite fascinating, actually. And I'm not going to cut this out. We'll wait for him to get back. But the one thing, and I'll mention it when Jason joins us again, that I think is interesting is I think that what he is charting is that there was a real change in the internet that happened around that time, and it went from being very text-based to not being very text-based, which I think is one of the other reasons why the influence of the blogs lessened to a certain degree. But very, very fascinating. So Jason, I didn't cut out because I don't like editing these videos.
Okay,
If I
all
can
right.
get away with it. But one of the things that I was going to throw at you is I think that one of the reasons why the influence of blogs went down as well is that what you're charting to a certain degree was that change that happened in the internet, and I'm old enough to remember it, where it went from being very text-based to not.
Yeah. So people
In
aren't
that I
really
think that the
reading
audience stopped
blog
reading, like
content.
the interest in reading. It's interesting to see it's flipped back again when you look at like or I think different people
Not for
are
music, I don't think.
not for music. No, I agree. But if you
Yeah,
look
yeah.
at like Substack and the way
Yeah.
that that's going is a
Long
whole,
form
it's a
is kind
very
of making a
different.
return.
Yeah. Anyway, so you
Yeah,
get your water and you're ready.
I got it. I got
Good
water,
stuff.
fresh Cape Town water.
So so you finish your story then.
Yeah, well, look, the whole space shifted, but at the same time, we still had this incredible demand for people who wanted to be featured on our blog. And so, as my revenue was drying up, I realized I had to do something different.
Yeah.
And so I started to explore alternate companies. Excuse me.
Oh, no problem.
Got a tickle in my throat. Maybe it's from talking too much. Sorry, everyone. Fresh water, fresh air. Still there.
Well, let me ask you. I'll ask you. Okay, I'll ask the audience a question, and then I'll repeat it when you get back. I'd be interested to find out with Jason whether or not he is a musician and what got him into music too. So we'll pick it up. Yes, you are. There's a guitar there, so you heard me.
Yeah, but this is just a hobby.
Just a
I'm
hobby.
not very good.
Well, you know what I
I'm
find?
not
I
a
find
musician.
with many of the people I talk to, just because of the way the industry has changed so much, the more balanced and I would say smarter all know it's a hobby. And I think you're much happier that way and more productive and probably produce better music.
Yeah,
It's because a lot of the noise is out of it then and it becomes what it's about, which is your passion.
and I mean the competition is insane. You're up against the odds. So yeah, we had these 300 emails a day. I needed another revenue source. The part I missed was that I actually quit Google in 2013 to take the music blog full time. So it was kind of the worst timing. You know, I'm at the peak of revenue, and in my head, I'm thinking it's just going to get better, and it didn't. So I either
There's a
had to go back
cautionary
to
tale there for everybody.
well, what I would say is if you're going to go out on your own adventure, make sure you have enough money in the bank to keep yourself going. So I
Was
did.
that
I
the
had
case
enough
with you?
actually for
Okay, good.
2 or 3 years. And then I moved back to Cape Town in part because cost of living is so cheap. So I was able to take my smaller dollar earnings. If I'd stayed in San Francisco, I would have been, well, it wouldn't have worked. I would have had to go get a job again. So I started tinkering with a way to solve the influx of emails that I had, these 300 emails a day. And that was really the genesis of Submithub. It was a simple form I created, the artist name, song title, put the links to your song. And then on my side, I had learned enough code from building Indie Shuffle that I was able to take those streaming links and turn them into nice little buttons I could just hit.
Gotcha.
And from there, it was a thumb up means I'm going to blog it. Thumb down means not for me. Woo. Too much talking. And what would happen was I would thumb down a song, and you would get an email that says, "Sorry, Jason from Indie Shuffle doesn't like your song enough. Better luck next time." And people would come back and say, "Well, why?" And that was kind of where I went. Well, for $1, I'll tell you why. So that same sort of idea and structure actually still exists today, 7 years later almost. And it really caught on with a lot of other blogs at the time who also felt that their inbox was unmanageable and what they enjoyed from music blogging was disappearing because there was such a chore now to go through music. I know it sounds crazy, right? It's an awesome thing to do, to look through music all day, but it can become a chore if you have to just sit there and do it all day. It becomes a job.
Yeah.
So cool. So that was the birth of Submithub, and it really took on by the third or fourth month. I think there were 50 other blogs signed up to use it.
Right.
And we funneled all of our 300 emails. I just set up an autoresponder that said, if you want to reach us, come find us on Submithub. And it actually marked a big pivot in the way that we covered content. So prior to that, a lot of the content we covered was what other blogs were writing about too. And so we stopped paying attention to what other blogs were writing, and we paid attention to our submissions instead. And in some ways, this, I don't want to say single-handedly, but I think it contributed a lot to a change in the ability for acts to break out. So in that golden era of blogging from 2008 to 2014, there were a lot of mid-sized bands that built up a really solid reputation. Many of them have managed to sustain it, but I do feel that today the market is so crowded and there's so little consensus in that market that it's a lot harder for these acts to emerge. So most of the acts still floating around today got their kick in blogging. Even some of the biggest stars like Billie Eilish, discovered by a blog called Hilly Dilly, who also discovered Lord. So yeah, it's completely changed the landscape. But what it does mean is that as an artist, you can actually do a better job finding your niche. So rather than sending out this massive 500-person email BCCing everyone, you can actually hone in on blogs or playlists or YouTube or TikTok who like techno, who like death metal, who like freak folk, whatever it is that your niche is. And just the internet in general has allowed people to really hyper-focus on where that niche might be. So I think today it's not so much about whether you can break out, but I think to your point that can you sustain a hobby that kind of pays for itself? Because it's not cheap being a musician. You gotta buy your instruments. There's the time that you spend on it, but actually I think it's probably a really productive use of time. Many other people aren't so productive with their time. But then you got to pay to distribute your music. You got to pay to come and use Submithub to try and promote your music. When you do get your music promoted, maybe you're going to break even. And that's kind of the thing. So the internet does allow you to find that niche of followers. It also allows you to get lost really easily.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, listen, one of the reasons why I started this project was specifically that I found, especially on YouTube, there's something that just isn't working in terms of music. Everyone, partly as well for me, it's the issue that I think like the video is dead. I'm not making any more videos because it's just not worth the amount of effort and time and money, not necessarily money, but effort and time. But also I think as a promotional thing, its time has passed.
No, you'd be better off on TikTok and Instagram Reels now.
But they have their limitations as well, format, and especially the amount of time. One of the things that I learned, I've done a fair amount of production sort of visually and doing videos and stuff like that, is I think that the 60-second TikTok video would probably take about 5 times the amount of time than a 3-minute rock video.
Yeah. Also, no one sticks around for 60 seconds. It's too long.
Well, see, that's the thing, and
10 seconds.
It becomes very. Although it's funny because I said I've got a new album that I'm working on, and I think that if I do any videos, I'm only going to do them for TikTok. I just haven't figured out how yet.
Well, I mean, one way you could do it is this is something we're trying to work on, but you go on Submithub and you can submit to TikTok influencers and you can put in a special request. So you can essentially prompt them to, I don't know if your prompt is wear a red hat and do something, I don't know, jump off your bed. you can sort of create a cohesive type of video that can then be shared with your existing fan base to keep them re-engaged.
Yeah.
We haven't found that TikTok is a good way. It's not a good way to drive people to your Spotify. It's not really a good way to promote your own TikTok, but it's a great way to engage with your existing fan base. So creating content on your own TikTok and sharing other people's TikToks that are around your song can be helpful ways to kind of grow that. It's difficult. I think a lot of people go into TikTok hoping that they'll be viral, or they see, wow, I got 10,000 plays on a video on TikTok. Why did I only pick up 2 Spotify followers? And the reality is that if I'm in TikTok, I'm just not gonna. I don't want to open Spotify. I'm in TikTok right now. I'm doing my swipe ups, and I'm not going to follow through to Spotify, and I'm probably not going to follow you either.
Well, and you know what? That for me is the biggest downside as a creator with all of social media is everyone's got their walled garden, and there are no doors.
Yeah,
there's no ways in and out, or they're effectively going to try their best to keep you on their site.
Yep.
Which is difficult because as a promotional tool, it becomes almost impossible. The best is probably Twitter, but Twitter, it's by building a following.
Well, this is where Instagram advertising can be helpful, and a lot of people swear by it, because you're only paying when someone does actually leave that walled garden.
Yeah.
So there's a guy named Andrew Southworth who runs a YouTube channel on the majority of his content is how to leverage Instagram ads to grow your Spotify. So he kind of works through things that way. He also uses Submithub, and he is a curator on Submithub.
Okay.
So he's done some really cool videos, but it is one way that you can push your song and try to get people out of that walled garden. I've heard pros and cons to its effectiveness, and whether it pays for itself. So there's really no golden arrow here. It's difficult, and I mean, you also have to have a really incredible song, and the standards these days are high.
Yeah.
When we go through submissions on Submithub for Indie Shuffle, and I'm listening to all of the songs that have been sent to us, none of it was recorded on an iPhone. That's all properly mixed, really talented people. It's rare that you get a song that you go, wow, this is amateur. So I think a lot of artists don't realize that once they have their perfectly polished, beautifully mixed, well done song, now you are average. And you don't realize that. And Spotify's got what, 60,000 songs a day coming onto their platform supposedly. I haven't seen that stat updated in a while, but and I don't know what percentage of that is independent artists and how much of it is old catalog, but there's a lot of music.
And how much of it is scam too, because there's a fair amount of scam.
That's also possible. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about Submithub, seeing that that's the big reason that we're here. I know that there's a number of different sections to it. I'm a former current user of it. So first off, there's a section where all of the bloggers are, where you actually do the submissions, correct? How does that work exactly?
Right. So that is the meat and potatoes of the site and its original intent. It makes it really easy for you as an artist to send your song to curators across different mediums, be it the OG bloggers, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud. We're kind of moving away from SoundCloud. I don't think it's as popular anymore, but the idea is that you can choose to send your song to these people, and we provide you as much information as we can about their behavior. So what genres are they into? It's one of the first things you do when you upload your song is you indicate what genre it is, and then we can just filter our list of, we've got almost 3,000 curators on there. Boom, we can bring it right down to 100 for you and say, cool, these are the 100 you focus on.
Yeah.
And then we can tell you where they share, how often they share, what the engagement is, what their feedback looks like. And we try to make things as transparent as possible. So let's say you come on there and you find 20 of them you want to send to. You're going to spend about $1 per submission. There is a free option But unfortunately, most of the curators do not make themselves eligible for the free ones. I do. We still at Indie Shuffle listen to. I actually really like the free ones because with the premium ones, these ones you're paying for as an artist, you get three things. You get a guaranteed response within 48 hours. You get at least 10 words of feedback if they're going to say no. So they need to explain themselves and prove that they actually listened to your song. So we ask curators to make it obvious that you didn't have your speakers on mute. And the third thing is that the curator has to listen for at least 20 seconds, but we find that the average is closer to 2 minutes. It's actually all public again, so we'll warn you if a curator has a listen time that is below 60 seconds on average. And I think that is less than 5% of curators. So more than 95% of curators listen to a minute plus of each submission that they get. So those are the three things you get with premium. If the curator doesn't check all those boxes, they don't respond in 48 hours, they don't explain why they're declining, or they don't listen for long enough, you get your credits back and you can use them on someone else. If they do like the song, then what happens is they approve it, they tell you how they're going to share it, and then we sort of hold the funds in escrow, if you will, so they're held up until that curator actually shares your content. So we had an issue early on in the site where a guy came on and approved 300 songs in a row, cashed out his money, and disappeared, and he never actually shared it. So that sucked. We had to eat that one. But yeah, that's the meat and potatoes of it. Really, we're like a super advanced directory. You know, those old school spreadsheets where you would just copy paste 500 emails. It's that, but many levels ahead. And so what we're doing there is we are monitoring the integrity of our curators, making sure that they're sharing things properly. They aren't doing any sort of sketchy bot buying followers. None of that stuff we don't want. And I've written tons of code, tens of thousands of lines, but you know, there's a lot going on in the background that's looking for things like this. You know, every 5 minutes I'm checking, has anyone had a spike in followers? And we can tell within minutes if someone bought followers on their playlist. Good news is most of them who apply to join Submithub are actually, you can tell really early on if they are legit or up to something sketchy. For example, one of our rules is we won't work with any playlister who charges for placement in their playlist. Good. So if they say, cool, I'll put you position number 1 for $30, position number 2 for $20, and I'm not even going to work with you. So yeah, we're doing a ton of vetting in the background to make sure that this directory is, it works. And then you as an artist, you have your choices. I mean, a lot of the more influential curators receive many more submissions and are pickier. So Indie Shuffle has, I think we have a sub 5% approval rate, which means there's a 95% chance you'll be rejected if you send us a song. But the idea is that I want to tell you that up front. So before you decide to send to Indie Shuffle, I will say, this is a tough one. Yeah. Good luck. They only approve, 3% of this genre. And it actually changes by genre because Indie Shuffle, maybe we we do cover a lot of indie rock, but we also get a lot of indie rock submissions. So it's actually harder to get covered on Indie Shuffle if you send us indie rock. We also really like lo-fi house and study beats. And if you send that to us, because we get fewer submissions, we accept more. So you can do all of these things and it's there for you to see. So that's the meat and potatoes of the product. You're sending to curators. You can also send to influencers and you can send to record labels.
Right. So
the influencer side is new. That's a different one.
That's interesting. So how many of each of those different groups do you have in house at the moment?
I think we have about 1,100 curators, about 1,400 influencers, and about 300 labels.
Wow. So there's a real wide variety then.
Yeah, and on the curator side, it's mostly Spotify playlists and then music blogs. So I think it's about 700 Spotify playlisters and then about 300 music blogs.
Nice.
So it's allowed music blogging to keep going. I think a lot more of these bloggers would have given up on the whole thing without Submithub.
Yeah.
But they're still doing it, and many of them they're probably earning about $100 to $200 a month. But we do have some music blogs on there that are earning $2,000 or $3,000 a month from this. So the part I missed with these premium credits is that if they accomplish all of those things, they get to keep the money. So it's really that carrot. I mean, that was the magic that made it work. I know it sucks to have to pay out more money again, but like you couldn't get responses from bloggers, and the trick was just offer them $1. Boom! Suddenly they'll listen to and respond to everything. I mean, it's.
Well, the thing is, first off, $1 isn't very much. Although
depends where you're
for
from.
some people,
in South Africa, that's a lot.
Yeah. But in the overall scheme of things, it isn't. It's a coffee.
And there are free submissions. And then there's some other things. There's a thing called Hot or Not.
My favorite.
Which came in like a 3-day spurt of stoned coding. I was like, oh, dude, great idea. So I just hacked this thing together. But the idea with Hot or Not is that if you rate songs, either hot or not, you can have your own song rated.
Yeah.
So you can come on there with a finished song, or a lot of people actually come with unfinished songs that they're still testing the waters on. They'll chuck it up, see how that one fares, maybe make a couple tweaks, throw that up and see if it does better. But the idea is that you can have your own songs rated so long as you rate other people's songs. You can
or you
also
can pay for it.
And you can pay for it. If you don't feel like sitting there and rating other people's songs, you can pay. And then if you are one of the people rating songs, if you write feedback, you can earn premium credits. So it's for every 20 feedbacks you write, you'll get a premium credit, which doesn't make economical sense to most people. But it is money from my pocket that I'm giving up. And it is a way for people to get free credits if they can't afford to pay for premium credits. And so if you're like a 17-year-old producer and you don't really have that much money, it's a kind of a cool way to expose yourself to a lot of money and get your song rated and earn premium credits. So I've got some ideas. Yeah.
I have to tell you from personal experience, having submitted songs and also having done the whole Hot or Not thing, I much preferred Hot or Not, weirdly enough. And the reason, the reason why, I mean, it's interesting. It was much earlier in my career, right? In terms of doing, like, since I started doing music. And what I found that was problematic for me with submitting stuff was that you didn't really get enough feedback. I mean, I didn't mind the rejection. You're not expecting that everyone's going to love your stuff or anything.
Yeah.
But I found the amount of feedback wasn't worth the cost, in a sense.
Okay.
Maybe it was just the ones the ones I chose, and there was also another issue which I'll come back to in a second. But with Not or Hot or Not, what I found was great is when I was doing it, I always left comments open. I always encouraged people to talk to me, and always gave honest and fulsome commentary on why I like something and why I dislike something. And I ended up getting into some really nice discussions with people and met a few people over it by doing it, because the people who did the same thing for me was very useful to actually hear why did someone like the song. And it leads to the bigger issue, and I'm hoping that there's someone offering the service, and if not, I'll throw it out as an idea for you.
Yeah.
One of the biggest problems that I've had is actually finding which subgenre my music fits into.
Yeah.
And it's, if I knew it, I would submit to them, but it's interesting. I mean, my music has been described across the board as everything from this to that to the next thing. And the bigger subgenres, it doesn't really fit because they've also sort of become very specialized. Where I'd say, well, I'm indie rock because, well, there's guitars, bass, and drum, and it's independent. Well, no, that's not indie rock. It's
right.
You know what I mean? And and so just to ask you, is there any? any of the curators that are actually offering a service like that, because that would be one that I think
I've
some people
chatted
might
about
be
it,
very useful.
or I've thought about it. I thought about a little thing where you can basically pay 5 credits to have 5 curators tell you which genre they think your song belongs in.
Yeah. No, see, I
Yeah,
think that would be extremely useful because then it's you know where to focus your efforts. I mean, unless
yeah,
because the thing is, I think the big one of the big disconnects between creators, between musicians and people who are listening to music is let's say I've got a lot of experience listening to music. I've been doing it for decades at this point. And things which might have been identified by teenagers today as in a subgenre of whatever, I know under a completely different name because I heard the
yeah, yeah.
original stuff that it's all based on.
Yeah, there's a lot of that's another problem with it is that genres are what's that? There's gender fluid and then there's genre fluid. Um, genre fluid.
That one I might
There's
start using.
yeah, there's a lot of different interpretations of like what is deep house, for example, and some people who are older, we've got a lot of curators in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who grew up in Europe during when electronic music was in its infancy, and so that for them deep house is something totally different. And then
Yeah.
you have someone who's 19 years old come along, and deep house is this. So we've actually had to over time split out quite a few of those genres to sort of specify this one's old school, this one's new school. Try and get that because yeah, it's genre fluid. It keeps blending, and people have different interpretations. Yeah, the what genre this is this that it's kind of a. I don't know if I would chuck that into hot or not, or just have a separate thing where you can ask curators, and then I would ask you. Let's see, take your best guess, and then I would narrow down on curators who are in related areas. And then it would be a grab pile. The first 5 to respond with their decision would get to earn the credits. I mean, would you pay 5 credits for 5 curators to tell you which genres?
Yeah. No, I doubt, but I would probably want a bigger corpus of music than one song. Because I think that partially as an artist, where you want to have an idea is where you fit in musically.
Yeah.
Although I mean, or it might be different things because my last EP that I released, I was listening to it last night. I hadn't heard it for a while, and it's much more electronic influenced. I was experimenting in a different way than where the current one is. But I would like to know, I would spend 10 credits to find out between my 2 musical directions where I'd be pigeonholed. Because unfortunately, we're living in the
Yeah.
age of pigeonhole.
So
Right.
I do want to roll out. I've been talking about this for 6.5 years now, but album reviews and EP reviews
That would be
has been
fantastic.
something people have been asking for. I'm not sure how that would be structured though, because you'd have to pay more.
Yeah.
You'd get more in-depth feedback. I think what I would probably do is identify curators who are qualified to give album reviews.
Yeah.
Many of them would be bloggers. And the idea is that you would be paying for an in-depth review, not necessarily coverage.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's probably the direction I would go. And that would be an interesting place to ask, what genre do you think each song is? So they would have to label each one. But I also think just a simple service where you chuck your song up and ask 5 people to tell you what genre it is could be.
That might be the most useful because I think it's almost, you have to get a group consensus.
Yeah.
I
I
think
could
it's like
probably do it. Let's see, 5 credits. No, I don't want to lose money. But I don't have to make money.
But listen, you could easily do something. Listen, I'd pay 5 or 10 credits
Yeah.
if you were able to provide me with 50 people, let's say, who had given a subgenre, so that you have a big enough sampling that you can say, if 15 people out of 50 all say it's that.
Yeah, 50 is a lot for,
or 25.
Think about the economics.
But I would pay more money to get a bigger sample size, because I think that until you have a reasonable sample size, the opinion it's worthless in a sense. You know,
Look,
unless you're lucky enough that person comes and he gets it right away and that's what it is. But what are the chances of that?
If you got a big enough sample size, I'm open to this. I'm open to this.
I mean,
I'm going to think about it, because you don't have to pay bloggers the full amount. They in terms of the economics, right? When you spend a credit, the blogger gets a credit. But on this, 50, you want 50 of them to respond.
Yeah.
But they're not putting in the same amount of work as they would writing feedback and doing all of that. It's just, which genres do you think this is? Click, click, click. So I could probably set it up so that they would have to, for every 10 you decide on, you get $2 or something. And then the economics work that you can, it's a bit like Hard or Not, actually, at the end of the day.
Yeah. Even from other listeners.
Yeah.
Because I think at that level, their opinion's probably worth as much as a blogger or a curator in a sense. Because they're the ones that are going into the virtual record store and doing the searches based on those terms.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the big disconnects right now in terms of finding music, right? Is just there are so many subgenres and subgenres of subgenres that are changing all the time that it's easy to just start and throw your hands up and say, who cares? Put it out there. Someone will find it.
The incentive again has to be money.
Has
to be. But I'm just thinking, you throw it out to the Hot or Not crowd. Say, cool, you want to jump into the genre rating circus, you have to have rated at least 10 songs on Hot or Not. And boom, now Hot or Not gets more engagement because people want to earn 20 cents per rating. Anyway, I'll think about it.
No, it's just an idea to throw out, right?
Yeah, the genre stuff is hard. There are companies and people out there who've tried to algorithmically and with AI figure out where your music falls, and you can get quite close. Yeah, based on rhythm and intensity and that type of stuff. But nothing beats the human ear in terms of figuring that out. So yeah, having a sample size of 50 people. The other one I'm planning to do, so it sounds like you've tried premium Hot or Not, where you just pay.
Yes, I did, and I didn't like it as much as the free one.
Yeah, I think I'm going to change that. So instead of choosing 3 things to be rated on, it's just going to be a requirement for feedback.
That would be much better.
Feedback's optional, right? And you probably found that 20 to 30% of responses have some feedback, and half of those are rubbish from people who are clearly trying to credit farm. But occasionally you get the gem, right, where you can actually contact someone, make a connection, network. A lot of people have done collabs.
The things that I would suggest is the different factors was less interesting than getting a useful comment.
Yeah. So I think making that a requirement. I've actually debated making it a requirement overall.
Yeah. I would say that I would be using the service more regularly if I knew I was getting honest commentary, good, bad, and indifferent. Because it's what you want. You have to be able to set some sort of guidelines, right? Because especially as a musician, you would know that if you've ever done any recordings, you listen to the thing 1,000 times before you release it, and you lose any semblance of you know what I mean?
You can't listen to the cohesive.
You're so into it, and you've heard it so many times, and it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. You hear mistakes, but you also familiarize yourself with mistakes to the point that if you remove them, the song disappears and stuff. So
I think well, it's good to hear that from you. I think in the next week or two I might actually tackle this, and either it will be that premiums require feedback, but it might actually just be that everything requires feedback and premium just becomes a way to be lazy. Which is fair. It's quite cheap. It's 6 credits for 50 ratings. It's a steal.
In terms of that, in terms of it was useful. It was useful as a general gauge, but I got less constructive criticism is the way I would put it in general.
From Hot or Not?
It's been a couple of years ago. I'll
Yeah,
have to admit, and I was into the site when we were sort of coordinating things. I went back
yeah.
in because I hadn't been for a couple of years, and I noticed, oh, I still have 20 credits to
Oh,
my
yeah.
account. So I, I'll go in and do some more testing, and I've got your email now, so I can send you.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
send you I'll
Look,
send you some feedback after I've done it again, because actually I've got my new album, so I can throw on some of the things I'm working on and see how they go.
we've been doing a lot on the curator side to try and improve feedback. So you'll notice that when you go through, there's a slightly different flow in terms of
Yeah.
how you request feedback.
Hmm.
We ask you whether you want specific feedback or sort of gentle feedback, and
Yeah.
if you say you want specific feedback, you also have an option to prompt. So
Yeah.
comment
Yeah.
on the mix or the vocals or whatever.
Now,
Um,
have you had any ideas of actually going to something where you do more of a premium feedback for more money?
this would be the album reviews, I think.
Yeah. Because
Yeah,
I because I think something, if you could be get like, I think part of the whole formula between how much it's going to cost is really how much of value you get back, obviously, right?
yeah.
So I think that, when, especially with an album, and I'll tell you, from all of the people that I'm talking to, everyone is going back to doing albums in terms
Oh,
of
that's good to hear.
musicians. Yeah, it's quite funny. It's like everyone sort of decided all at once. It's like a zeitgeist thing. Um,
Okay, so maybe now's the time
I
to,
think it might be a really good time.
yeah.
And the thing is, with the amount of effort you put into an album, I think, some people, I think there would definitely be a market of people who would like, at some point in the process, just to have a reality check
Yeah.
before
Uh,
release. You know what I mean?
yeah, I think, look, I think, as I said, you would have to be qualified as a curator to get
Oh, no,
into
no,
this program
definitely.
to rate albums. And as an artist, you would know that you're not paying for promotional features. You're paying for someone's in-depth review
Yeah.
of your album. And then you could say, here's my 10 tracks, and I can say to the curator, you have to listen to each of these for at least 30 seconds, and you have to provide at least 10 words of feedback. But then I ask the artist, like, which 2 or 3 songs do you want the curator to focus on? And then
Yeah.
on those ones, they have to write a paragraph. So I can kind of mix it up. Anyway, I'll have to
Yeah, yeah. Well,
brainstorm that one.
it's spitballing things at you while I have you
It's
on.
been there for 7. Well, spitballing is a good place to start in terms of actually making it happen. I've got a few things up my sleeves I still need to work on. One is we've got something on the influencer side called budget submissions. So influencer it's pure payola.
Yeah.
If they don't share your song, you get your credits back. So it's structured a bit different. It's, we don't want payola in the music industry, but that is literally how the influencer industry works. So
I think
with
myself, removing payola would be like removing electricity.
Huh. Well,
I think
I
it's
don't
so
think
deeply
payola is,
embedded in the industry. There's
yeah,
always been payola. They just
you
call it
won't
different
find
things.
it on the curator side of Submithub.
No,
So we are
that's good. No, that's good.
staunchly anti-payola. And there
Yeah.
are some services. There's one called Muso Soup. I don't know if you've bumped into them,
No.
but it's a payola website for music blogging. They have their homepage has a giant article defending why it's not payola. So that's how you know it is.
Mhm.
The idea is that you're not paying for placement. You're paying for the professional journalist's time to write about your song.
Yeah.
If you don't pay, they won't write about your song. But if you do pay, they will. And that's where it's payola.
Yeah. But listen, at least they're open about it.
Yeah. So
And
on the influencer side, we've got this budget thing where I basically ask you how much do you want to spend, and you can say, cool, my budget is 500 credits, and I say, all right, you'll get about 50 shares for that, and they'll get you this many views estimated, and then we automatically line you up with influencers, so you don't actually have to do anything. So we've got a few of the Universal Music Group loves using this feature because they're busy people, so they just want to set it and forget it, and they don't have time to scroll through a list of who to send to. So one of my next big projects is actually to try and port this over to the curator side, because I think algorithmically I can do a better job than 80% of musicians can in terms of choosing who to send to.
Yeah.
I kind of know what to look for. We get a lot of people who get taken away by the influence of someone, and they submit to all the huge blogs because they have a 10 out of 10 engagement score, and they gloss over the fact that each of them has a 2% approval rate. And then they send me an email going, I sent to 50 people and I got no approvals. And I'm like, well, look at who you sent to. So there's just a lot of lessons that we've learned along the way that could be employed in terms of creating a dynamic campaign. So that's probably one of the next big projects. And then maybe the album reviews will. Yeah, I got to redo Hot or Not. I'm the only developer on it, so it's kind of whatever I feel like doing.
So are you working on this full time now, or is this your?
Yeah, this is definitely full time.
Okay.
Yeah, my kids take up a lot of time, but otherwise this is it. So and I'm happiest when I'm coding on this. So
good. Well, it's
evolving.
fascinating. I figured your story was the opposite way around, that you started coding and then got into this. It's interesting that you were into this and then got into the coding.
Yeah, the code was just a
really
product of doing it. I just wanted my website to be better, so that's how I learned to code.
Well, DIY,
Yeah, never had a class, never went to school. And at this point, I don't even have to Google stuff anymore. I can just code. I just kind of know how to code.
Wow.
So yeah, it's going to be a constantly evolving thing as long as I'm alive.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is to keep getting it better. So having conversations like this and just listening to feedback is very useful, because it gives me an idea of the direction that things need to go. So the takeaway here is album reviews I should get around to, and then this reimagination of Hot or Not is probably a good direction to go. I think feedback is one of the most valuable parts of it, less so the rating and the.
Yeah, I think in all cases it's really feedback.
Yeah,
it's also from the curators, getting more than a few words, like great isn't necessarily a good comment. It doesn't.
No, you'll find a lot of that on Hot or Not. We found that since changing to specific versus gentle feedback, about 75% of artists choose specific feedback, and we warn them up front that it's for people with thick skin. And it's a lot of it is about expectation setting. So prior to this, we didn't, and we would often get artists who were upset when someone was too specific, or upset because someone wasn't specific enough. And so, people are different. Some people want you to be nice and gentle, and other people just want you to dig into it. So it helps if we can say up front, here's Martin's new song. He's got thick skin. Tell everyone if you think his vocals are in key, and then they can just launch into their feedback. So we've seen a big improvement there. The numbers are surprising to me, but I think 94% of people are satisfied with feedback under this new system, which is that's good. That's good.
No,
it's only like 2 or 3 months of this new system, and you can rate. Are you satisfied or unsatisfied with this feedback?
Yeah, well, I'll definitely have to try it out, because one of the things that I found absolutely hilarious back in the day when I was doing it was you could almost tell by the feedback the type of person who was giving it, right?
Yeah.
Because there were some people that they're true music fans, they're enthusiastic about music, and you would engage with them and it was great.
Yeah.
There were others, though, and I think they were musicians often, and there were musicians who felt threatened somehow, somewhere, somewhat, and would give very unconstructive criticism.
Is that on the curator side or the Hot or Not?
Well, in the Hot or Not.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Where it was obviously they were either just out trolling for fun, because obviously
some trolls,
you could do that, and trolls are trolls, and they're everywhere on the internet, right? But I think sometimes as well it was musicians where they let a little envy, or I don't know what it was, seep through.
Possible.
Possible. Well, just from the comments, it was sort of like, wait, that what? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like the comment would have very little to actually do with the song. Like as valid criticism for the song, they'd be criticizing something in the song that didn't exist. Type
Mm.
things. Anyway, it's a fascinating thing. I have to say I loved love the hot or not section. That for me was the highlight of the site much more than the actual submissions. Although now that you've explained it to me better, I think that my approach in would be different than it was
Yeah.
in my past time. And I know I made the decision with this new record. I've never been very good with the promotion side of things, mostly because by the time you actually finish the record, you're so emotionally and just physically tired by it
Yeah.
that the last thing you want to do is spend months.
I don't want to look. I don't want to shoot my own product here, but
Yeah,
I don't think Spotify is a great promotion technique.
Spotify's terrible for promotion.
Um, so if you're gonna go on the curator side,
Hmm.
looking at the old school bloggers is probably going to get you the better feedback because
Yep.
you're getting feedback from people who write.
Yep.
It's not always good, but by and large, it's better than the Spotify playlisters. You're also getting a bit more validation. You're ideally getting a blog post out of it if things go well. And there's someone actually writing about your song and engaging with it.
Yeah.
On the Spotify side, you're lucky you'll pick up 10,000 plays. And then when it's gone from the playlist, that's it. You're unlikely to generate any fans or create any meaningful relationships or get any sort of feedback on your music.
Yeah.
And let's face it, the reality of you actually making a living as a professional musician online is very unlikely. You're going to have a much better time if it's money you're after and a living, then live performances are going to be a much better avenue for creating fan relationships and making money. You'll make more in a bar gig than you would in an entire year of online streaming. I think Spotify had said there were something like 70,000 artists who made more than $50,000 last year.
Yeah. Out of how many million?
That's nothing. And that number includes Michael Jackson and the Beatles and Sting and Phil Collins and Mariah Carey and J-Lo. And like it includes these thousands of names that are household names.
Yeah.
I know some people who are lucky enough to just be kind of bands who make a living on Spotify. And that's rad. But yeah, at the end of the day, if you are doing this as a hobby and you're realistic about it, I think Submithub is a great way to get feedback and validation and engage with other music lovers and be part of that community. Because in many ways, it is a community.
But well, and that gets to the other part of the site that we haven't talked about yet, which is all the chat rooms.
Oh yeah, that's what we got. We got chat rooms.
Well, why don't you describe, because there's 3 or 4 different ones. I don't know how many there are at the moment.
There's a few. So the most active chat room is the bloggers chat room, but you don't get to see that one.
Mm-hmm.
There's a labels chat room, a publicist chat room, an influencer chat room, and an artist chat room. And then there are some, there's the listen to this chat room where people go to spam their links.
Yeah.
There's the networking chat room where people go to spam their networking. Those are both spam chat rooms. But the artist chat room is pretty well moderated and pretty decent in terms of engagement and interactions that go on. I know there's, these days, I believe, what's that one platform? Discord. Discord is really popular for communities of chatters. I can't get a handle on Discord. I'm a tech dude and I just go on there and it's just confusing. I don't get it. But the idea is that there are chat rooms on Submithub, and a lot of your communication with curators as well is through these chats. And as you've mentioned a couple of times, also through Hot or Not, when you're writing your feedback, you can indicate whether you are comfortable with that person contacting you.
Yeah.
And if they choose to, that all happens through the chat interface as well. So, it's not like the most beautiful chat interface in the world, but I coded it and it works. It's just a nice way to make connections and engage with people.
You know what? With something like chat, you don't need bells and whistles.
Yeah,
you just need it to work properly, and be easy to follow.
I think it does that. It doesn't have push notifications. It doesn't have that, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it works. It's so it is a good way to network and connect with artists. And I know of quite a few people who've done collaborations and remixes and that type of stuff through relationships that they've made on Submithub's chat rooms. So kind of one of those things where you just, you whip it up and code it and you don't really know what it's going to do. The whole goal was for me to be able to communicate easier with people, let them vent their issues so that I can learn where the shortcomings are and
Yeah.
make it better.
And I have to say, and I'm sure it's still the case, that back in the day when I was on it, I actually communicated with you. You're very open. You keep your lines of communication there open, and you're easy to get in touch with, which is great.
We try to be, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important.
I try to be quick too. I think that one goes back to my Google days where I was in sort of a service role where the whole goal was to respond as quickly as you could.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's not healthy, but I feel relatively balanced. I mean, we have a customer support team now that I think most of our responses are within 5 minutes.
Wow.
Across the site. So
yeah, that's a fantastic rate. So congratulations on that.
Thanks. And yet there's still so many complaints. I mean, don't go, or do go search for Submithub on Twitter. Don't search
Listen,
for anything.
I think the problem. Ooh, sorry.
I said Twitter is a terrible place.
Oh no, I would disagree with you there. Music Twitter is its own universe.
Yeah, there's a lot of hatred on Twitter.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Listen, the thing about Twitter that I myself didn't know until I got involved, in terms of music Twitter, is there are a number of different worlds. And music, as long as the politics doesn't get mixed in, and the vast majority of musicians keep it out, is really a good place in the sense that most of my contacts now are over Twitter.
Okay, all right.
Those Discord chat rooms, they're Twitter chat rooms, right?
Do they have chat rooms?
Well, they don't have chat rooms, but you can get a private chat going where you invite 30, 40 people into it.
Right? Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
So it's a similar type of thing. You can post stuff, you can cross promote with people.
I just live in that different world where it's mostly people just
a lot of that. And what's interesting about Twitter specifically, especially on the music side, is almost, I would say, 95% of people keep their DMs open. So I've literally, you are one of the few people on this, and you're going to be the 7th or 8th interview. You're one of the few people that I haven't coordinated everything over Twitter with.
Oh,
because
but you could have if you wanted to, because our DMs are open.
Yes, no, I know. Well, I didn't know if it was your specific account or if it was, the account that went to your
it's
your
me,
customer service.
But I'm actually, honestly, I try to not look at it.
Yeah. Well, which is fine. I mean,
it just
I do because it's all people that I'm chatting with, and actually, the 2 collaborators, or actually 3 so far, for my new album, are all people I met over Twitter.
Hey, look, there it is. You sent a tweet. All right.
Yeah. No, I tweeted it out.
I actually went so far as to uninstall the app.
I've done it on many occasions, and now
it just brings me down. It brings me down.
No, I'm literally only there for the chats and for the ability to chat with people I know, and actually find new people. Because one of the things that was quite truthful that you'd said in terms of promotion, and one musician that you should really be following is John Mickey.
Okay.
He has done MICHIE, and then Collective. It's all one. Okay. And what's interesting with him is he's really the center of my sort of Twitter music universe, and
the John Mickey Collective.
Yeah, exactly. Give him a follow. But what's great about him is that he actually walks the walk. And for his last album release, he literally went old school and sent an MP3 to every college in the US. Right?
How'd that go? Yeah.
Well, it was right when COVID started.
Okay.
So not as well as it probably would have done any other
Yeah.
year. He's still got responses back. He's built up a following. I mean, he's got his check mark at this point, which is quite something. And they did that. That is all algorithm because of the number of people who's following him. Right. This is a real legit one. It's not a political one at all. And his advice to me, and it was quite interesting, was you've got to get in touch with the bloggers. So he literally gave me this copy of this Bible with email addresses for thousands of
the indie Bible
of internet radio stations, bloggers.
Is it the indie Bible?
Yeah,
we hate that as curators because it's unsolicited. So it's,
but
it's funny.
But listen, this is a numbers game, right?
It is. But I mean, you're now describing why Submithub exists.
Yeah. Well, but it's interesting. Yeah. But I think the audience should know both sides of it, right? Because the thing that he's been able to do, and where you actually, I think, do make money, is playing live when they allow you to. And that's another thing that is a new thing to the mix that didn't exist before. Live venues aren't so certain anymore, unlike what they used to be. And the other thing he said is it's really, you have to engage with people who are, with the bloggers. And many of them are on Twitter. And Twitter is one good way of actually.
So it's probably a good way to contact bloggers.
Email,
probably not.
No. Twitter's like I said, in music, Twitter, the way people are, it's very, very open DM, open people. And listen, I when I started this, I started contacting people because one of the biggest problems with something like this is finding guests on a regular basis, right? And not chasing people down all the time.
Right.
And that's probably the biggest downside of this. But what I found was interesting is like 90% of the people I contacted said yes. And I literally have a Google Sheet somewhere where I've got my next 20 interviews lined up.
Nice.
And all I have to do is.
I think people enjoy podcasts in general.
Oh no! And what I found is that there wasn't really anyone doing it on YouTube, and I think it's a long haul, and I've decided I enjoy doing it. I hope I do a reasonably good job of it, and it's something that I think it will build. It's slowly building my audience, and I think that's so that you get legit people that are actually listening.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is the comments I get back. I mean, it's mostly from other musicians. It's like, oh, wow. It's like you talk to this guy that I know, and I learned all kinds of new stuff about it that I never did because it isn't just 10 minutes of the same blah, blah, blah. You get to learn a little bit about the person themselves, their musical influences, tastes and stuff like that. And so as a last question before I let you go, seeing that you are a musician, I'm going to ask the question that I always ask because I think you could ask it with anyone. But what was the first record you bought? What's your earliest musical influence?
First one I bought was a CD. So I'm 36 now. So
yeah,
records were already out when I was of purchasing age. I went to Tower Records and I bought Smashing Pumpkins' Adore was the album. And then shortly after that, I got Sublime's, I can't remember what it's called. Sublime, one of those Sublimes. So, I mean, that puts it in the late 90s.
Good choice.
Yeah, those are the first two. Smashing Pumpkins, that was it. Adore. What a moody album. If I go back to it now, I'm just like, what was that? It's not
how old are you?
14?
Yeah,
15. Yeah,
moody album. I'm shocked.
Exactly. It was shortly before my emo phase, where I was listening to Bright Eyes, and then I went through a hardcore phase where you're listening, you're just getting your anger out. So music's evolved a lot. Now I'm way into more like down tempo. Bonobo is still one of my favorites. But even things like Radiohead, I was super into, and these days I just can't.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't mind it when I put on a Radiohead album, but it's just not what it was.
Well, you
Yeah.
know what? With me, I went through a whole phase where I just stopped listening to music completely.
Phew. I don't
You
know
know,
what that's like.
and then I heard about this thing. I heard that it was very easy and cheap to make music on the internet, specifically on the iPad. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know, you know, young and impressionable, you know. But actually on the iPad, it was true because there's all of these great apps, and they're actually unlike when you get over to the proper versions, they're not
Yeah.
expensive. You know, so for $50, $100, you can set yourself up and, you know, boop and bleep and learn
Yeah,
some
but
stuff
no, I
and
mean,
sort of
you
start
can have fun.
figuring things out. Oh, and it is
That's how a
fun.
lot of people get started. You know,
Yeah, well,
there's a guy.
it's how I got started, and I still, you know, it's like with me, it's I'm doing a lot more with MIDI now, so I've sort of become more grown up. But I still go back and use some of the methods I did when I was starting. Is I'm not a musician. I don't play any instruments. I've tried a few times. I just don't have the mindset for it. But I enjoy other aspects. I'm a singer, so I sing. And I found ways of creating music that don't involve me being a musician.
Huh,
Well, I guess I am a musician, but involve me
you
being
are
a player.
playing the instruments. Yeah.
I'm not a player, is I guess the best way I would put it, right? Or at least not in musical terms. Anyway, anyway, Jason, thanks so much.
Sure,
This is
my pleasure.
a great chat. We should do it again sometime.
Let
Hopefully,
me
there'll
launch the
be.
album thing, and then we
Well,
can
that
catch up.
listen, anytime, you know, my DMs and my email are open. I'd love to come you back, have you back on if you want to promote something, you know, or talk about something. And the other thing is, hopefully, we'll get some good feedback from this, and maybe they'll you know, there'll be some interesting feedback from people
Yeah,
who
look,
listen
I'm
to
open
it.
to honest feedback. If you dish it, you got to take it.
No, listen,
So
you don't grow and you don't learn and you don't improve without it.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
totally.
there's no shortcut for that, right?
Nope.
You know, it'd be nice if there was, but there isn't. Anyway, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
I
And
hope it was
like I said,
informative.
hopefully we'll be doing it again sometime soon.
Cool.
You take care. Bye bye.
Cheers, man.